So we'll jump right in and we're going to get into templates today. So one thing we covered last week was the importance of building templates in Dubsado. The reason why is because the more templated you can get your business, where you have, a general contract that you send out, or if you have certain things that are pieced together that you would typically send out to people, emails that you would typically send out to people, if there are certain services that you offer, it's best to put those in Dubsado as templates, so that way you can use them over and over again for any incoming clients. What templates do for you is they really give you the ability to service more clients, because you're not creating something every single time from scratch. You have a base to start with, and you might make a few adjustments to it, but in general, you have something already set up ahead of time that you can send out. So it allows you to basically service more customers and also give you consistency as well too. So everything you're sending out, it looks the same, it's branded the same. So templates are very important when you're using Dubsado. So learning what templates and features Dubsado has to offer and how they work, which is very important, we'll talk about that in a little bit, and how they work first will help when you begin building workflows. So for those of you who weren't here for week one, the whole goal of Dubsado is to get your workflow or your business process into Dubsado. But before doing that, there are some things that help to get set up before you start workflows. And that's what we're going to really deep dive into today. So the first thing we're going to talk about is form types. That's over here on the left-hand side. We'll talk about all of the different form types that we offer. So let's go over to Dubsado. And when you're in Dubsado and you're brand new and you're first getting started, you'll spend a lot of time in the template section, and that's what we're obviously going to cover today. So right over here in the menu underneath templates, we're going to talk about all of these today. So the first thing we're going to cover is forms. And one thing I do want to preface when we're talking about these templates in this first portion, we won't deep dive into all of the specifics about each template, because that could take 4 hours to get into every single template and all of the different menus and all of that. So one thing I encourage you to do is that this will be a way to see what Dubsado has to offer. And if it's something that you need, definitely go to our help center, go to our YouTube channel, and we have specific webinars that deep dive into specific material. So I have an entire webinar on just proposals. So if you want to know very specific information, I recommend taking some time and learning about that specific topic. But because we have so much to cover today, this will be just kind of a general overview of all the different pieces, and then try to figure out what it is that you need for your specific business out of what we talk about today. So first thing we'll talk about is contracts. If you're not familiar with Dubsado, you can use contracts in Dubsado to have your clients electronically sign documents and have that locked in, so you don't have to do paper contracts and scan things and send them. It works a lot like eSign or DocuSign, and you can, or HelloSign. I think that's another one of them that you have too. But it works very much like that, where you can create contracts in our system and it will have all of your terms and agreements in there. You can put in all of your clauses, everything like that. And then at the bottom, what you can do is you can use these elements here on the right-hand side to build your forms. And with the contracts, you can actually add in initials that you can put on the form, and you can also add in signature areas as well. So in the system, our contracts and our sub-agreements, that's the other form we're going to talk about too as well. Both of those can have signature areas added onto them, so your clients can sign them electronically. So that's what's very specific about the contracts and sub-agreements. And a lot of people will ask about the differences between contracts and sub-agreements. And one of the biggest things, and it is the big thing, is with the projects in Dubsado, you can only have one contract attached to the project, one main general contract. It's usually your normal terms and conditions. And with sub-agreements, you can add as many of those to projects as you would like to. So any secondary contracts, like waivers, proofs, non-disclosure agreements, photo releases, all of those different types of kind of secondary contracts, you can add those and as many as you want to projects. So the biggest difference between the two is that contracts, you can only have one per project, and it's going to be your main contract. And sub-agreements, those are for kind of your secondary agreements. If you have addendums to your contracts, different things like that, you can create sub-agreements for those. So contracts, great way to get a signature from your client, especially to lock in any services that you have. We do have, I guess I'll take a commercial break here to talk about this. We do have a template library up in the top right-hand corner up here where we have a lot of different templates that you can use and add those into your account. So if you're brand new to Dubsado, you don't have any contracts that you have saved or anything like that, you can click the template library up there in the top right-hand corner, and this will give you a lot of forms that you can use. All of these are free to use. You can copy these to your account, make changes to them. If you like the wording in them, you can use that or change it up, and you can completely customize these forms to fit your business, but you can use these at least as a starting point. So that's going to be what you can do with contracts is basically just a signature that you want to get for a client. Sub-agreements, we talked about that briefly. The biggest difference, again, is with sub-agreements, these are for secondary contracts. The ones that are, you still need them, but it's not your main terms and conditions contract. And so if we click into sub-agreements, with these, I just added this in. This is just a design proof that I got from the template library. A lot of you who are in the design realm and you do proofing, sub-agreements are the perfect thing for that, because with these, like I said, you can send as many of these as you want to out to the client through the project, and you can put signatures on them. So if you have 3 rounds of proofing, you can use the sub-agreements to send out each round of proof, get a signature on there. So that would be a great reason to use the sub-agreements. Is anything that would need a contract or a signature or anything like that, but you want to send multiples out to the client. So contracts and sub-agreements, as far as functionality, they're the exact same thing. You can add signatures to them, initial boxes, but it's really just, it has to do with the project itself on how you'll use those 2 different documents. But as far as the different elements you can use to build your forms, they're all the same on there. Cool. So we got those 2. Contracts and sub-agreements are for signatures. Now we'll move on to questionnaires. Questionnaires in Dubsado. These are going to be one of the kind of most open-ended forms that we have in Dubsado. They can really be used for almost anything. I've seen people use questionnaires for timelines. They use them just for kind of just an overall just pricing sheet. That you can use them really for just about anything to collect information from the client. And what a questionnaire is for, we'll click into the one that I have here. Questionnaires, like I said, are for gathering information from your client. So this wouldn't be just basic contact information. If you were here last week, we talked about the lead capture form, and that's really where you're going to get the basic contact information from the client, because it's what you'll embed on your website. But the questionnaire is something you can send out later after they've already inquired to get more information from the client on what they're actually interested in. So the questionnaire, you can use all of these elements here, short answer boxes, yes, no questions. You can put in images, text boxes, drop downs, all of these different elements. You can add these to the form, and that's going to give you the ability to collect more information from the client. That's really what the primary function of the questionnaire is that if you have, 20 questions that you need to get answered, you can just send this out to them and have them fill it out. It'll capture that information and it'll be saved on that form for you, and it'll be put in the client's project. So that's the main thing for questionnaires, but you can really use these for a lot of different things. One thing that's very special with the questionnaire is that this is the only form that we have in the system that once you submit it, it's never locked. So by that, I mean, once a questionnaire gets submitted, you can always go back in and edit information, change it around. The client can go in, they can edit information and change it. So if you're looking for a form that you want to have that can just constantly kind of be updated at all times, the questionnaire is the best form for that. In our system, when a client signs a contract or signs a sub agreement or fills out a proposal, it gets locked. So you can't go back in and make edits once it's been submitted. But the questionnaires, what makes those really special is that you can use these as kind of a live document that can always be updated if you need it to be. So again, you can take this and do what you want with it. I've seen people use it for a lot of different things. So they use it for homework for coaches. They'll make questionnaires as homework for the client to fill out. So really get creative with how you want to use your questionnaires. The other thing with questionnaires too is that up at the top here, you'll see there's a little up arrow next to the plus button. When you click that, you're actually able to drop a PDF in and use that as a Dubsado template. And it's considered a questionnaire, but it might not be an exact questionnaire that you're sending out. Like I said, it might just be a quick pricing guide. It could be just a little kind of brochure just to show what your pricing is, or it might be just a checklist that they need to look through. But what you can do with these is when you drop these PDFs in, they become a Dubsado template that you can use. However, if you are doing this method, this will only be for PDFs that are informative only. They can't be filled out at all. This would be for read-only PDFs where you're just giving the client information. You don't need them to fill anything out at all. It's just to relay information to the client. You can actually just drop those in here and use those as Dubsado templates. If you need the client to fill something out, it has to be a Dubsado form. So there's not a way to just drop a form in here that needs to be filled out. This would just be for anything where the client is just reading over the information, but you do have that capability there. And once you drop those PDFs in there, you can use those just as you would any other template. You can send those to the client portal. You can add those to workflows, all that good stuff. And you can have that as a template that's in here. So questionnaires, there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do with those. So be creative with how you want to use those questionnaires. The other thing too that I'll mention as well, since we're talking about uploading PDFs to Dubsado, one thing that we do offer at Dubsado is we do offer a complimentary service where we will recreate up to 10 forms for you as Dubsado forms where they can be filled out. We'll recreate up to 10 of those for free. And so all you would do there is you would just attach the forms that you want to have be created as a Dubsado form and just send those to forms@dubsado.com. And our team will look those over. They'll take those forms that you have and recreate those as Dubsado forms. So if you have any PDFs that you've used in the past, any Word documents, things like that, just attach those in an email. And like I said, we do up to 10 for free. We do have an a la carte service where if you need more than 10, it would just be a certain amount that you would pay us after the 10 is up. But we do have that as a service for you guys too as well. And that is trial or paid. So you don't have to be on a paid subscription for that. It's just a complimentary service that we do here to kind of get content in your system quickly. So that way you guys can start using it. So questionnaires, that's another section. And then we'll talk about proposals. Proposals in Dubsado are like order forms. So if you have different services or products that you offer, what the proposal allows you to do is send out a form to the client, and it allows them to choose from the packages or the services that you offer. And when you actually submit a proposal in the system, it generates an invoice automatically inside their project. So this will trigger an invoice being created once somebody submits a proposal. So what's special about the proposal is that you can actually take packages that you've created. We'll talk about those here in a little bit. You can take packages that you've created and you can put them on this form. And what's special with the proposal here is you can see is there's a package element. This is the only form that we have in the system that you can actually put packages on this form and have clients select from different packages that you add on here for the different services that you offer. And we'll talk about packages here in a little bit to get more of an understanding on those. But that's really what the proposal is designed to do, is to be sent out to the client, have them select from different things that you offer, and that will automatically generate an invoice for that client. So proposals are a great way to pitch your pricing for a client. And the other thing that's really great with a proposal, I'll just cover this briefly because it's a pretty important piece, is up at the top in the proposal area underneath the settings menu, you can actually attach a contract and the invoice that gets created. You can attach that with the proposal. So what you would be doing is sending out the proposal, and then attached with that would be the contract that they would sign and the invoice that they would pay. So it's all in one sequence. What that does is it eliminates the back and forth of, here's my proposal. Once it's signed, then I write up a contract, send that out, I get that back. Then I draft up an invoice and send that out. So it eliminates all of that back and forth where you're just sending it out as a bundle where they fill out the proposal, sign the contract, pay the invoice. And you can decide if you want to take off the invoice or take off the contract completely and just do a proposal. You can decide maybe if it's just proposal contract and then you send out the invoice later, or if you do proposal invoice and send the contract out later. But the biggest thing to remember from this is that the proposal is the centerpiece. So there's not a way to do this with other forms. This is only with the proposal, where you have the proposal options in there to add on a contract and an invoice. So that's a big piece of the proposal, especially when we get into writing out your process here a little bit later in the webinar. But proposals in general, these are going to be order forms that you can send out to the client. They can make their selections, and then it would create an invoice. And then the last one is lead capture. With the lead capture form, we really took a deep dive into that last week. So definitely go back and watch the first session. But the lead capture, this is primarily for capturing contact information. This would be the form that you would embed on your website or send out to somebody to get them started in Dubsado and get that project created. And also workflows start from the lead capture as well. So that's a rundown on forms. Like I said, if you're looking for more information on forms, definitely check out our help center or our YouTube videos. We have a lot of different webinars that deep dive into each one of these. So, but that's kind of in general the different form types that we have and getting familiar with what each one does. So we have form types. The next thing we'll talk about actually is we're going to go to packages since we talked about the proposal. So we'll skip ahead just a little bit to packages. And with packages, that's also in the template section as well too. If we go down here to packages, this is going to be where you can input all of your products and services that you offer. And a lot of people might get hung up on the term packages, but really all that means is it's a service or a product that you have that has a price point attached to it. That's really all it is. So as you can see here, I've just put in some examples of what you can do with it. You can create your different packages that you may offer or your different services. I have some coaching sessions like a 3-pack or a 6-pack. You can put that in there. Any add-ons or additional things that you want people to select from. If you have add-ons in your business, you would create those as packages. And so basically anything that has that price point, you can add that to a form, and you can always make customizations once it's on a form or once you add these to an invoice. You can always change those up, but you want to input these sort of as building blocks so that once you add these to an invoice or once you add these to a proposal, you have a starting foundation point, and then you can make some edits if you want to as well. So that's really what packages are, is they're the building blocks of invoices and proposals. A great way to look at packages and proposals is that your packages are going to be like your menu items, your different food items that you would have on a menu. And then the proposal is the actual menu that you would send out to a client to have them choose from. So that's really what packages are, is a way to have clients select from things on the proposal. And then if you're just doing invoicing, you can just quickly add these onto an invoice without retyping the same information on there. So that's what packages are. The next thing we'll talk about is scheduler templates. So scheduler templates in Dubsado, it's a newer service. We've had it for a while, but it's one of our big features that we released a little while ago. And with the scheduler, what this is designed to do is to be able to send out your availability to a client. So if you're familiar with different platforms like Calendly or Acuity, different platforms like that, where it's a third-party scheduling service, you essentially would do the same thing in Dubsado, where you would create your different appointment types or your different event types that you have if you're familiar with Calendly. And what you can do is you can send these out to a client and they can pick from your availability. And how you would do that is you would just create these different templates. So your different appointment types that you have. So today, when we get into process, we're going to talk about, I have a consultation call with my process. I also have a pre-event meeting. If you have paid coaching sessions, maybe different time frames of coaching sessions, like a 30-minute, a 60-minute, a 90-minute, things like that. You're going to create all of these different templates with their own availability, their own parameters, and it's all going to read off of the same calendar. So if you have an appointment at 9 a.m., a consultation, you wouldn't be able to have a pre-event meeting at the same time because it would be able to watch that. And our scheduler templates can also watch external calendars. So if you have a calendar that you're importing, and let's say it's a dentist appointment on Tuesday at 10, our scheduler can see that, and so it would block that off too as well. So if you are using a third-party platform, you can use our scheduling service. It's built into the system, and so you can experiment with that, see if it works for your business. It is in beta right now, and the reason it's in beta is because we're actually planning on adding a lot more features to it. So it's fully functional right now, and it works just fine, but we are planning on adding in text messaging at a later time. We're going to be adding in the ability to have availability for all of your different team members that you have on the team in Dubsado. So right now it's just at its basic level, but we are going to be adding a lot more features to it. So that's the reason we have the beta tag on there. We get that question a lot, if it works or if it doesn't. It definitely works, but we just put that tag on there to let our users know that we're planning on adding to it and making it more robust. So scheduling, you're able to do that as well. Again, if you want more information on scheduling, definitely go check out our help articles. And I have other webinars specifically on scheduling and using that. But that in general is what that is for. The next thing we'll talk about is payment schedules. Payment schedules in Dubsado give you the ability, and it's right here in templates at the bottom there. Payment schedules in Dubsado give you the ability to let your client know how much they need to pay and when they need to pay. So if you're in a business where you might say, I require 50% up front and 50% a week before their event or a week before their wedding or session or anything like that, you can build that in this section here. And you can use different parameters on when things are due. So if you have something where it's, I require an $1,000 deposit and then the rest is due at a later time, you can create those in the system as well. And these can go on your invoices. So that way, whenever you're invoicing your clients, they'll be able to see, okay, this much is due at this time and this much is due at this time. So in general, that's what payment schedules are designed for, is to just let your client know this is how much you need to pay and when it's due. And again, I have an entire webinar on payment schedules. Definitely go back and check that out in our YouTube channel if you want more in-depth information on payment schedules. But just in general, that's what those are for, is in the payment schedule area. Awesome. And then the last thing we'll talk about here when it comes to templates is the canned emails. Canned emails, in my opinion, are the most overlooked things in Dubsado, and it's the ones that don't get the most attention. And they're actually one of the most important things in the system when it comes to your templates. Canned emails is going to be a section in Dubsado where you can create payment reminders, welcome emails, any consultation email reminders, scheduling emails, anything that you constantly send out to your client as an email. That would be considered a canned email in our system. And this is a database where you can have emails that you're constantly sending out to clients over and over again. You can build those in this area here and then use those when you're sending things out to clients, or you're selecting it from the workflow and you want to send one of these emails here. So some people do ask questions, what's considered a canned email? So a good rule of thumb that I like to mention is, if you've sent the same email to more than 3 people, if you look at your client list and you've sent an email out to more than 3 people, the same one, just make it a canned response. So that way you can use that later on. Anytime someone comes in, like a thank you email, if they fill out a lead capture form, that's a big one, like an inquiry email. We're not a good fit. That's a great one to have just in case who you want to work with isn't a good fit, you could create one for that. So really, as a whole, the canned emails are responsible for email drafts that you want to send out to your clients over and over again. That way you don't have to retype the same material. You can just pull from these. And then if you want to make adjustments to them, when they're in the workflow, or if you want to make tweaks to them, you can do that too as well. But this is just a starting point that you'll use that you can have as a base whenever you're sending this out to a client. So that's the template section as a whole. Those are the different pieces that we have. So the responsibility on your end would be to look at your business and think, what ones of these can I use for my business? Do I need a contract? Maybe you don't. Maybe you've never thought about having a proposal or having a questionnaire that you would use. Maybe you don't really have a scheduled payment system that you want them to follow. You could use payment schedules to develop that. So it is important before you build your workflows to know what's available. So that's why I wanted to go over the different templates first, so that you guys know what's even available in our system to write out your workflows. So take a look at those. Think about what it is that you need in your business. Once you are finished setting up your templates in Dubsado, it's important to practice sending these to yourself through a test project. And I'll kind of talk about the next point too here as well and tie these in together. Your knowledge of doing things manually in Dubsado will be a direct representation of how efficient your workflows will be. And so I'll kind of explain why I have those as 2 points. When you're building your workflow, if you're not familiar on how to send a contract out to a client, then when you get to your workflow, you're going to have no idea how to actually do that. So your workflow is going to be a direct representation of your knowledge of Dubsado. So one thing I encourage you guys to do, if you're not at workflows yet, that's totally fine. If you're kind of in this stage where you're inputting content and getting your canned emails in the system and putting in forms and all of that, what I encourage you to do is to go into Dubsado and create yourself as a test project. Create a project, put your email in there, and practice sending contracts and sending forms to yourself, sending emails to yourself, because that way you can get familiar with how the system works. And the workflow is just an advanced version of what the system already does. So if you don't have that knowledge of how the system works as a whole, then when you get to workflows, it's going to feel like it's super overwhelming, way over your head. And literally your workflows are a direct representation of how much you know in Dubsado. A great example of this would be, we have it on hiatus right now, but our account solutions team, we were doing setup services for a little while. That'll be coming back once we build out this next piece that we're super excited to do. But when we had our setup services, we would build really elaborate workflows, or there were clients that had virtual assistants that would build these really elaborate workflows, and they were streamlined and everything was great. But someone would take these workflows and not really know what to do with them because of the fact that they haven't had time to learn Dubsado yet. So even if you have a very elaborate workflow, it's all beautifully crafted, if you're not familiar with how the system works, then it's very tough to understand how the workflow will work, because it's just an extension of what the system does. So that's one point that I'll really recommend, is that if you haven't gone through and practiced sending out a contract, practice sending out forms and emails, then I would recommend building those and then set yourself up as a test client and then send things out to yourself, just so you can get some confidence on how the system works.
Your screen sharing has been disconnected.
It looks like the connection just dropped. Hopefully it's popping back in. Hopefully you guys can see that. Let me know. It looks like it just dropped out for a brief second, but let me know if you guys can still hear me okay. Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened there. So let me pop back over and we'll continue. Testing your process. And what I mean by that is testing these things out. It ensures quality, comfortability, and consistency in timing and development of confidence in your business and Dubsado. So that's kind of a summary of what I just said there. So whenever you're working on sending things out and testing things, it builds up your confidence. And that's one of the main points, if you remember from last week, one of the main things that we want from you guys is to be able to come into Dubsado and confidently manage your clients. So that's what testing does for you, is it gets your confidence built up. So that way, if someone comes in, you say, I know exactly what to do. I can come in here, click on this, and I'm comfortable with the system. So that's what testing does for you. The next thing we'll talk about is client portals. Again, this is a very big piece of our system, so I won't deep dive into client portals, but what client portals are in our system, I'll just touch on those really quickly. Client portals is a section in Dubsado that you can give to your client, and it's a way they can log in and see all of the information that you've sent them. So contracts, invoices that they need to complete, questionnaires, forms, all of that good stuff. It's a central place in Dubsado, and you can send them a login where they can put in their password, and that way they can log in and see all of the information that you've sent them. And again, it's a very big piece of Dubsado, so I won't deep dive into there today. We do have complete webinars on client portals, so I'd recommend going and checking that out if you want more information. But the reason I won't deep dive into those today is because we're going to really talk about writing out your process and understanding how to develop your workflows. But I wanted to mention the client portals so that when we talk about process, you understand, oh, there's a way that you can give your client a place to log in to see information, so it makes sense. But you can customize your client portal aesthetics under settings, brand settings, and portal. Again, go in, check out the information on the client portals. We have a lot of information on it, but in general, that's what the client portal is for, is to give your client a place to go in to see email communication that you've had. If there's forms they need to fill out, invoices they still need to pay, they can go back and look at that information. So that's what the client portal is for there. So those are the big pieces of Dubsado. So the templates and the client portals. If you understand what you need out of those, then you're ready to go in and start writing out your process. Once you decide what it is that you need from all of these ingredients, if you will, then it's time to come in and start writing out how you want things to go. So now we're going to talk about writing out your process. And for those of you guys who have downloaded this outline or on Facebook, when I paste it in there, I want you guys to use this for the homework that I'm going to give you at the end of this, because this is going to give you very detailed information on how to properly write out your workflows. So if you're wondering, how can I get my workflow to, how do I want to plan out my workflow? I'm not sure where to start with workflows. What I go over today will help you immensely on writing out your workflows. So this section here, take a lot of notes and then use this whenever we get to the homework portion of everything. So some people might have the question, how do I write out my process? Some people know that you need to write it out before you do workflows, but they're not familiar how you do it. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is how you can write out your process. So if you're not familiar with what a process is, I want to help you guys out too as well. And maybe me asking some of these questions will trigger some things for those of you who have a little bit of a process together, but you want to expand on it. So if you want to understand what your business process is, you'll ask yourself 6 questions and write out the answers in detail to those 6 questions, and we'll cover these here. So the first question you're going to ask yourself is, what is the first thing that should happen when a new lead comes in? We talked about that last week with the lead capture. When a new lead comes in, write out everything that happens once a new lead hits your account. I get a new lead, what happens? That's question 1. Write those out in detail of what happens once a new lead comes in. Number 2, what are the next steps to get them booked or onboarded? So once I've done my first initial, once they first hit the system, what are the next things I need to do to get them booked? Do I do a consultation call? Do I send out a proposal to the client? What are the next things that I need to do in order to get them booked? So that's number 2. You'll write out those steps. Number 3, when do you consider a client being booked? So every business is different. Some people might say it's when they sign their contract. That's what locks them in. Some people might say when they pay their deposit or when they pay in full. So think about your business. What would you consider this is when the client is booked? Make sure to write that out. Number 4, once the client is booked, so they've either, signed the contract, they've paid the deposit, what happens right after that? So maybe you do some onboarding, or what's the first thing that you do once a client gets booked? Write all of that out. Number 5, when does your work with the client conclude? So what cuts them off? What's the stopping point? Is it the event that they have? Is it that they finish their coaching sessions out? Is it when the design work is over? Identify when that is concluded. So what cuts off the work that you're doing with them? If it's ongoing maintenance, then you can write that out too as well if it's an ongoing client, but you want to know if there's a cutoff point for when you're done working with that client. And then number 6, do you send any follow-ups out after the project has ended or once you're done working with them, the design is over, you've done it? Is there anything you do afterwards or once the photography session is over? Is there something you send out afterwards or the wedding? And you'll write those steps out. That right there is going to be your business process in 6 questions. The more detailed you can write out the answers to those 6 questions, the better your workflow is going to be. So you can use a Word document, you can use Excel spreadsheets, a scratch piece of paper. Some people like sticky notes. There is online platforms that are free like Draw.io. That is not a sponsored ad. We're not sponsored by them at all. But you can use platforms like that online where you do like mind maps and you can draw it out that way. You can use something like what I'm using. It's called Notion. You can use that. Anything that you want to use to write out your process, use that. Choose the method that works best for you. And the most important thing is just to get it all out in front of you. So if you do a brain dump and just start writing things and then structure it later, do that if you want to. I know for me personally, doing the mind maps where you have the bubbles and the lines going different ways, that is so confusing to me. I look at those things and just space out. I don't really understand those that much. So I wouldn't use that method, obviously. I'm very much of a linear, this step, this step, this step. That's how I like to look at things. So that's how I would write out my process. So take those 6 questions, really think about what is my process, write out the answers to those. Your written out business process is your workflow. If you don't have a business process, you can't have a workflow. It's literally the exact same thing. So when you're building your workflow, it will be an exact representation of what you've written out or what your steps are. So if you're brand new to business, let's say, and you don't have a business process, take some time researching your industry. If you're in the photography realm and it used to just be a hobby and now you want it to be a business, go in and kind of look at what normal photographers do. We have a Facebook community that has a ton of people in there. You can talk to different people about what practices they do. Look and see what normal business practices might look like for your industry, and that will help you kind of develop a business process. If you have a business process, maybe refine it a little bit and look at, am I missing pieces in there? But that's a big piece of it that a lot of people aren't aware of, but your business process is your workflow. So you can't have one without the other. So take time to write that out there. So now we're going to get into the fun stuff. Now we're going to talk about what a process actually looks like when it's written out and what you guys can do when you're writing out your process. So I created a process here. Again, this is not related to any specific industry. This is just a general workflow that I wrote out. The reason I used this particular workflow and when I wrote this out is because when we get into workflows, I want to be able to use almost every single action and trigger in the workflow so you guys can see how all of those work. So this really is based around me just wanting to be able to show you how every action and trigger works during these next 2 weeks. So this isn't necessarily for a certain industry. It's not for photographers or for coaching or anything like that. This is just a general workflow, but it's going to give you an idea of what all the different actions and triggers can do once we get into workflows in the next 2 weeks. So the first thing, I just call it round 1. This is when I'm just basically writing out what it is that I do. So I'm taking the things that we talked about first today, all of the different elements and pieces, and now I'm structuring it to put it into just a step-by-step on when I want those things to go out and what's going out to the client. So we'll start at the top. Website form gets filled out. Very simple. We talked about lead captures last week. The website form gets filled out. Once that gets filled out, I want to send out my consultation call scheduler. I want to book an appointment with them. After I get done approving that I want to work with them. In my business, I want to qualify them first. So I only want that consultation call scheduler to go out if I approve it and I say I want it to go out. Then after that consultation call is over, I want to email them a pre-session questionnaire. So I have a form that they need to fill out before I get on the call with them. So 24 hours before the consultation, I want to email out a questionnaire to them. Then once the consultation is over, I want to prep my proposal. So I'm going to send them out a quote based off of what we chatted about on the phone. So I'm going to prep my proposal. And then I'm going to email out my proposal, contract, and invoice together once it's prepped. So we talked about combining all of those three elements. I'm going to send all of that out to them once I get done prepping it. Then I want to email a follow-up email to them if they haven't filled anything out in a week. So if I don't hear back from them after a week and I send out that proposal, I want an email to go out saying, hey, where are you at on this? Do you still want to work with me? I want to send that out to the client. Then after they could sign their contract, after they make their deposit, that technically makes a lead a booked job. So for those of you guys, that was number 3 on the list. So right now I'm at number 3. This is when a lead becomes a booked job. So that is what it's going to be, is when they make their deposit. Then once they're done with that, I want to activate their client portal, and then I want to set their portal password. Again, if you want to know more about the client portal, go do some research on that in our help center or YouTube videos. You can create a password for your client to send it to them to log into their portal. So I want to make sure that I do that there. Then I'm going to email the information to the client portal information, so they can log in. And then 8 weeks before their event that we're going to do, I'm going to send in a checking in email. So I'm just going to check in with them. It's 8 weeks before their event. We're 2 months out. Hey, how are you doing? Just want to make sure you're doing okay. Then I'm going to send out a pre-event meeting scheduler. So I do this 2 weeks before the event. We get together, maybe for coffee or something like that. 2 weeks before, we sit down and we plan out if there's anything left that needs to be discussed. Then I want to send out a receipt email to them. So once they pay their full amount, I want them to get a receipt. Then I have get everything packed up and ready to go 3 days before the event. One thing to take into consideration when you're writing this out is that you can put to-dos in the workflow or tasks in the workflow. So the workflow does not have to be just click a button and it just runs through all of this stuff. You can put tasks in there too and reminders on when you need to get things done. So when you're writing out your process, if there's things you need to remember to do that's kind of standard with each person, write those in there as well, because you can add those to your workflow. Then after I get everything packed up and ready to go, I want to send out a congratulations and a review, to leave me a review because I killed it. And so I want them to fill out a review. So I'm going to send that out 3 days after the event. And then I want to send out just a thank you card in the mail, just a little something for them, maybe a gift, a week after their event's over. So that right there is a workflow. Yours might not be that long. Yours might be really long. But the one thing to make sure that you do here is to write out in detail what it is that you're doing for them. So I'm emailing a consultation scheduler. I'm emailing the pre-session questionnaire. When you want it to happen, when do I want the proposal to go out? I only want it to go out once I get done prepping it. And then you also want to write in which piece of content is going out with it as well. So as you can see, I said, I want the consultation scheduler. I want the pre-session questionnaire, the proposal. I'm actually writing out the pieces of content that I'm going to need to be built in the system. So that's the big thing, is to make sure you include these 3 things whenever you're writing out your workflow steps. What it is that you're doing, when you want it to go out, and then which piece of content is going out in that action, if you have any. It might be a task that you need to get done. You wouldn't have content in there. But if it is an action that has content, you want to include that whenever you are writing your action out. Again, now I'll explain the A's that are next to here on these random actions here. Dubsado workflows do not have to be 100% automated. A lot of people might be hesitant to workflows because they might say, I don't want to push a button and then it just runs. I want to have control over it. So when you create tasks for yourself, you can have a little moment in the workflow where you need to complete that task before it moves on. And then you can also add approve buttons to actions before they go out. So if you have any action where you need to customize something before it goes out, or you need to approve something, make sure that you want it to go out. Once we get into workflows in these next 2 weeks, you'll be able to see you can add approve buttons to anything that's going out to the client. So it sends you an email that says, hey, do you want this to go out? Are you ready for this to go out yet? If you don't, then you can go in, make edits in their workflow, and then approve it to go out. So you can create tasks for yourself. You can add approve buttons to actions before they go out, and you can indicate what actions will need approval when you're writing this out. So again, with this action here at the top, I only want that consultation scheduler to go out if I'm wanting to work with them. So I wouldn't want it to be automated. I want to approve it first. I want to review their lead capture form, say, does this person have the right budget? Can they pay me enough for what I'm good at? They are not, so I don't want that to go out. Or yes, I want to work with them. They have cash money. I want to work with them. So you can put approve buttons on anything to make customizations or just see if you actually want to send something out. So take that into consideration. 2 more things here, and then we'll move on to the last piece, and then we'll be done for today. So the next thing is when you're sending any form or scheduler template, any form or scheduler, use the phrasing email the whatever that form is. So when you're writing out your process, if you have any forms that need to go out and you're emailing those out to the client, you'll use the phrase email the blank. So if you look up here, anything that has a form in it, I'm putting email the consultation scheduler, email the pre-session questionnaire, email the proposal. And you'll see why when we get down to the next step, why you should use that phrasing. But when you use that phrasing, every template that you're sending out to the client needs to have an email that's going to be going with it. And this will help for round 2 when you're identifying the content that you need. So just remember that anytime you're using a form that you're wanting to send to a client or a scheduler template, when you're writing out your process, just use that phrasing, email the blank, and put in whatever it is. So now if we scroll down here, the last thing here, and then we'll get into round 2 when you highlight your content and we'll be done for the day. So if you have a workflow, and we get this question a lot, so I wanted to identify this on this session. If you have a workflow where there's a fork in the road, usually that's at the beginning. If they are saying yes or no to working with you, and it's, they might say yes and want to work with me, they might not. Anytime where you have that fork in the road, always write out your process first as if they will say yes. So even if you have a no option, and when they're first coming in the system, they might say yes, they might say no, always go with yes first and write out that process. There's 2 reasons why for that. 1, this will get you all the way through your entire process. If you're hung up on if they say no, it goes here. If they say yes, it goes here. Say yes, because then you can write out your whole process because they're working with you. So it gets the ball rolling and you don't get hung up on if they say yes or no, I need to do a no workflow or something like that. Just take your time and do yes first. So that will get you through your whole process written out. The other reason too as well is because as business owners, you want to get in the right confident mindset for clients wanting to work with you. If you're hung up on, well, I got to be prepared when they say no and have all this planned out, it gets you in the wrong headspace. So you want to get in the mindset of, yes, they're going to say yes to me. And once they do this, then this is going to happen. So it creates that positive energy. And so when you're writing out your workflow, always start with yes. And then you could think about if they say no, what do I want to have happen? But at first, just start with yes and get all of that written out so you don't get hung up on that. They might say this, they might say that. Just write out yes first. So that will help for those of you who have kind of a fork in the road type business. But hopefully that helps you guys out. Okay, last thing, I know we're kind of running short on time. For those of you guys who have stuck around with me, thank you so much. Like I said, today is very content deep. So we'll get into this last thing and then I'll open it up for questions. So now, once you have your process written out, the next thing that you're going to do is highlight the content that you need to build in the system. The workflows in Dubsado are content dependent. What that means is that when you're building a workflow, it's going to look at your forms here and it's going to say, which one of these do you want to send out? If you don't have your forms built in here, then you can't send it out to the client. Or canned emails, like I said, if you don't have your canned emails written and you go into a workflow and say, hey, I want to select this form, you're not going to have any content to send out to them. So why we're doing this second round of highlighting your content is because you want to have everything in front of you. You want to have all your content there in the system, your scheduler templates, payment schedules, your packages, all of that. So that way, when you get to the workflow, you have everything ready for you to go. So what I did was I took the exact same process, the same actions. I have 16 here and 16 up here. I just copied and pasted it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the content that I need to build in the system. This isn't the only way that you can do this. This is just one that makes sense for me and how my mind works. You can create your own creative system if you want to use different sticky notes for different colors or something like that. That could be cool. But this is one that makes sense for me. So you can use this if you want to, use a different method, but you still want to do this. So what I did was I color coded things. I said, if it's a form that needs to go out, it's going to be blue. If it's a scheduler template, it's orange. If it's a canned email that I need to write, it's red. And if it's a task, it's green. You can use this if you want to, or change the colors up if you want to. But this way, what I'm doing is I'm identifying what I need to build in the system. So if you look at my account right now, I have everything built in here. These are all my emails that I need. Here are my forms. I have my contract, my pre-session questionnaire, my proposal that I'm sending out, my lead capture form. In my scheduler area, I have my consultation call. I have my pre-event meeting. I have my packages in there for my proposal if I want to do that. My payment schedules are in the system. I haven't even touched workflows yet. So if I go to my workflow section, it's blank. I have no workflows. I'm not ready for that yet. Right now, I'm going through and I'm highlighting the different pieces that I need, and I'm going in and I'm building those things. So you can use this scheme if you want to. Now, the reason why I had you do email the blank is for this reason right here. If you're sending out the pre-session questionnaire to a client, let's say you're emailing it to them, which email are you going to use? So a lot of times it can be overlooked that, oh, I need an email in my system to send them out the questionnaire. So by putting email the blank, now I can make this red so that I know I have a canned email that I need to write. So email the consultation call scheduler, I need to send it to them. So I have that email as a vehicle to send it. Email the proposal and contract, email a follow-up back to the client, email the pre-event meeting scheduler. So anytime I have that form in there, I want to make sure I'm doing email the beforehand. So if you're writing that out, use that. And color code it, get creative with it. However you can identify, okay, I need these schedulers, these forms, and all of that. One thing I'm going to mention too, this is not in the outline. So those of you who are sticking around or watching this later, start with one workflow. That is one thing I want to preface is that last week we talked about the lead capture form and you can have all the different service options. Don't get overwhelmed with all of that. Just start with your most popular one, the one that most people book on. If you are a photographer and you do weddings and you also do maternity or something like that, pick one that's the most popular and just do this for just one of those first. That's what I'm doing for this setup series. I won't be setting up 4 or 5 workflows because it's really just the same process. Writing it out, highlighting the content, building the content, going into the workflow. So just start with one workflow. Don't overwhelm yourself. Just start with one process and get comfortable with that. And then you can kind of rinse and repeat and do that for other processes. So now that I have my process written out, I'm ready to build my content. I have a game plan on this is the content that I need, and this is what I need to build in the system. I'm ready to go. And as you can see, I have the little A, that's for my approval. Those are for the actions that I need to approve to go out. Now I'm ready to go. Pro tip for you guys, and then we'll wrap up. A pro tip with scheduler templates. A lot of people have had this question lately, so I wanted to address it. With scheduler templates, there are 3 emails that go with a scheduler template. There's the invitation email. That's to send it out to them to say, hey, book with me. That's what this one would be here. The email, the consultation call to them, that's the invitation email. That's on the basic page. It's the email at the bottom. That's the email you'll use to send out to a client saying, hey, please book with me at this link. That's the first email that goes with a scheduler template. There are also confirmation emails and appointment reminders that go with the scheduler template too. So those are built into the scheduler. So when you have a scheduler template that you're sending out, there's 3 emails that you're going to use for that. So write 3 emails for all of your scheduler templates. That way you can have a confirmation email that goes in the advanced tab. For those of you guys who are further along, it's in the advanced tab on your scheduler. There's a confirmation email section and also a notification section, but that's where your appointment reminders go. So you'll want to build those 2 as canned emails. It's kind of a sneaky thing almost, but for content purposes, that should help you guys out there. So wow, that was a lot. I know that was kind of a whirlwind of information, but hopefully that at least makes sense from a macro level. Again, go back and rewatch this or go look at other help information to get more of a deeper understanding of what the different forms do, how to build payment schedules or schedulers or things like that. But on a macro level, that's how you're going to at least get you in position to set up workflows, which is what the next 2 weeks are going to kind of tie into. So homework assignments. There's 3 that you'll need to do this week. If you got everything done that you did last week, you would now move on and you would start this homework assignment. If you don't have everything done from week 1 or you haven't watched week 1, do that first and then do this. So if this is your first time coming into this series, do not start here. Go back and rewatch 1 because there's a lot of different things that you have to catch in that first one to set you up to do this. So for those of you who were here last week, you got the homework done, or you at least know what you need to do and now you're ready for the next. These are the 3 things you're going to do. Write out your process for 1 workflow. Again, I mentioned that earlier. Don't stress yourself out with all of the different workflows that you need. Just start with 1 workflow. It will make things so much easier for you. Write out your process for 1 workflow. Make sure to include all the forms, contracts, emails, schedulers, tasks. Make sure to include those when you're writing those things out. That's number 1. So write out your process. Number 2, go through your written out process and highlight all of the pieces of content that will be going out through the duration of your process. So do this portion right here, round 2. You'll go through and highlight things. Get creative with it. If you're doing something online, maybe make each bubble a different color or something like that. Sticky notes, you can use a scratch piece of paper, use highlighters and markers. Get creative with it. Spice it up, make it a fun thing. You can take a whole blank wall that you have at your house and do one of those kind of murder plot things that they have where they have the string drawn to different things. Get creative with how you want to do that, but you'll go through your written out process, highlight your content that you need to go out during the process. And then this is the biggest thing, you'll go through and you'll build that into the system this week. So if you have scheduler templates, you'll build those canned emails, get those input. With the forms, I mentioned this earlier, we have a complimentary service. You can send us up to 10 forms for free and we'll input those for you. Just send those to forms@dubsado.com. That is all of these forms here. So that would be contracts, sub-agreements, questionnaires, proposals. If you have anything like that, send that to us. We can input it in for free. That will give you content in the system, but make sure to write out what you need first. But those are the 3 things that you'll do this week. And that's going to get you in amazing position to get into workflows, which are going to be kind of the next 2 weeks. We're going to start deep diving into those.